ANC has now formally confirmed it's withdrawing its Electoral Court application to try and get the Electoral Commission to reopen the candidate registration process for the local elections. That's after the party had already submitted its legal papers which detailed the problems the party had, including the fact it was unable to get all of the information from its regions that it needed in time. It said if the registration process was not reopened, the ANC would lose power in 9 municipalities and there would be a change of administration or an opposition in 35 councils overall without a vote being cast. Dr. Collette Schulz-Herzenberg is at the Department of Political Studies at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke is a political analyst. They both join us now. Professor Maluleke, let me start with you. Good afternoon. This is a bizarre thing. The ANC submits its papers, publishes its argument, explains the huge consequences of the situation, and then withdraws its application. What kind of impression does it give us?
Yeah, Stephen, it really is, it shows a party that is in real trouble. It's a show of ineptness of sort, because they always knew that the matter was at the Constitutional Court. So that's the reason that they give, that they now have realized that the matter is at the Constitutional Court. But I mean, that's not good enough, because this has always been known. So clearly, they are flailing. They are at 6s and 7s. I think that their legal advisors are also not giving them the correct advice. I hope it's not because they can't afford the legal action that they were trying.
Dr. Schulz-Herzenberg, we have not seen the ANC do something like this before. Now, how difficult is it actually to get all of the candidate lists and names and deposits in on time? The ANC is bigger than the other parties. If I remember correctly, it's the only party that contests in all the wards in the countries. That must come with some challenges.
Certainly.
I'm sorry, it was to Dr. Schulz-Herzenberg, Professor. Doctor, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think we would all agree that it is a logistical exercise of note, but it's not unprecedented to be able to meet these deadlines. Most political parties have managed to do this over previous elections. I think we can all sympathize with the fact that COVID-19 has posed new challenges. I mean, as the ANC said, they've struggled to hold face-to-face branch meetings and election procedures at the local level to consolidate and finalize these lists. Nevertheless, I took a quick look at the ANC's own website earlier today, and it's clear that they had actually envisaged a long process, and their own website stipulates that they needed to start in May to begin to draw up these lists. So one can only imagine that they had anticipated a long process that would face unwarranted and unexpected delays. And I think from the IEC side, there's about 3 weeks in which a political party can then go forward to upload the deposit, the documents, and the respective lists, of which I could imagine for a larger party there are many. Nevertheless, from that perspective, it is not unprecedented territory, and parties generally manage to meet these deadlines.
And I suppose, Dr. Schulz-Herzenberg, just to continue on this, while the ANC is the biggest party, it probably also has the most experience. It'll have the people in the back room, the computer people, the administrators who've done this the most. So they really do know how to do it.
Absolutely. And, there's a large infrastructure that's dedicated towards ensuring lists are sorted and finalized and accurately reflect what's happening at local level. And so, one can only wonder whether this actually is a reflection of greater disarray in the party that might speak to staff shortages and other issues, but also politics that's playing itself out locally, making it increasingly difficult to finalize these lists.
Well, Professor Maluleke, I would like you to come in on this, because it would seem that the higher the level of contestation, the higher the level of division, the greater the delay for the ANC to get the list. Would you go along with that? In other words, this is a consequence of division in the ANC, perhaps?
Well, certainly it's not totally irrelevant to that particular factor, because the ANC has been going down this road for some time now, and there is a sense in which this is a culmination of lack of process, lack of competence, administrative competence within the ANC, and a bleeding, if you like, of skills. I mean, I just reread the article I wrote about the elections in 2016, and I pointed out problems that the ANC had in that election, which are very similar to the kinds of problems that the ANC is having now. So it's not as if the ANC didn't know that there were going to be elections this year. It's not as if they don't know what the Constitution says about that. So there's clearly a process of decay that is taking its toll on the ANC administratively. At the moment, it manifests also in the political factionalism that we see, but also in the financial problems that they have. They just seem to be at a very, very low ebb as a party administratively and in terms of readiness for these elections in particular.
And Professor Maluleke, I mean, the fact that the Secretary General, Ace Magashule, is suspended, the fact that during his time as Secretary General, I haven't seen much evidence of capacity building in that office. I mean, all of this must feed into that.
Yeah, I suppose that feeds into it. I mean, you can't miss someone as important as a General Secretary at this time and not have consequences. But I also think the ANC has to make a choice. I mean, do you want to keep all these tainted personalities and not do anything about that? You know, so it's a Hobson's choice for the ANC. I don't know that Magashule himself individually would have made much difference in terms of what is happening now. I think that the problems are more systemic. They are not really about one single individual. They are systemic, they are historical. They have been coming for a long, long time, and the ANC has neglected these issues for the longest time. I don't even know that the ANC knows how many branches it has. I mean, this is a huge organization with a presence at every little corner in this country. So they should be able to use that to their advantage, but they seem to be using it to their disadvantage, if one may say so.
Dr. Schulz-Herzenberg, there's now an issue where in the municipalities and the councils that are going to be affected by this. So 35, we understand, that's what the ANC says. 9 of them will see the ANC just out of power completely. This all happens before any voter casts her ballot. I think many people, voters and the ANC, might feel that that's not democratic. And yet, the Electoral Commission surely is allowed to have deadlines and insist that people stick to them.
Yes, you're right, Stephen. Rules are rules, and the onus is on the political party to ensure it meets all its obligations to contest an election. And you're right, about 13% of municipalities in this country stand to be severely affected, or certainly the ANC stands to be severely affected for not being able to contest that 13%. But actually, it's broader than that. About a third, I work out a third of municipalities are affected by this, and the ANC will feel the effects across a third of our municipalities. Now, this will inevitably, if we go into an election in October without the ANC, with its full lists, its full PR list and so forth submitted, will affect the party quite drastically, I would imagine. And there are all sorts of questions and issues that arise from that. The one is that outcomes of the election are going to be determined by the parties that are registered and have lists. But just that in itself then undermines the millions of voters who may have wanted to cast a vote for a particular political party that is now not able to contest its election. And I have a number of questions about where those particular ANC voters might go, if at all, anywhere. And we may see some vote shifting because voters simply feel forced to now choose another political home for however short a period of time as it may be. But also I would expect many of those strong ANC core partisans to then just stay at home. And this will inevitably bring turnout down quite dramatically in those particular areas. But it would also then shape the outcome, and we would probably see a number of political parties, opposition parties, who are currently opposition parties, doing rather well, but actually not necessarily reaching the 50+1% mark to actually hold a council or municipality, and being forced to go into coalitions with other smaller opposition parties, which could then bring about all sorts of interesting and perhaps quite unstable politics.
All of it on a very low poll, because the chances are that many people won't vote. Professor Maluleke, there's a bigger question here. If all of this goes ahead, so if the Constitutional Court insists that the elections go ahead in October, if the ANC doesn't get back on the ballot in these municipalities, the ANC will suffer a significant, let me use that word, a significant loss of political power because of administrative, I suppose, incompetence, I think we must use that word, but also as a direct result of the divisions within it. That surely leads to more recriminations within the ANC. It makes the divisions worse, not better.
Yeah, Stephen, I don't want to say the chicken are coming home to roost, because that's an unkind expression to use. But certainly we have now all seen the cost of ANC divisions, not only for the ANC, but certainly for the ANC itself. It has been extremely costly. But it has also been costly for the country. So you talk about the loss of political power. There's also a loss of face, loss of reputation for these, giant organization that is nearly 110 years old, which is the biggest, not just in this country, but by comparison in any country of our similar size. So all of those will go down the drain. It's not merely the loss of power, it's also the way it is happening. I mean, I don't know if this is how the dream dies. Is this how the ANC dream is going to die? Is this how it explodes? Is it how it sags and explodes into the faces of members of the ANC? So one of the reasons members of the ANC might have to vote for someone else is not merely that the ANC will not be available to vote for, but there will also be, some of them will be very angry that the ANC was unable to do what they should be able to do, that is to register and make sure that they field candidates. So there will be a lot of anger about that as well.
Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, Dr. Collette Schulz-Herzenberg, thank you very much. Indeed, an important conversation. I have a sneaking suspicion it won't be the last conversation that we're going to have on this issue over the next little while. We're still, of course, are waiting for the Constitutional Court to hand down that decision. If anyone does know a Constitutional Court judge, feel free to remind them that it's quite a burning issue. Let's have